Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commands and commands us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Okay, I want to welcome everyone here tonight. We're going to be looking at Revelation chapter 13. And we're going to be finishing off chapter 13 from going through 11 through 18. All right, now just kind of as a review, the last several weeks we've been looking at chapters 12 and 13, and see that John had revealed these six personalities. We looked at the woman clothed with the sun, meaning that was Israel, the nation of Israel, and then we had the red dragon, which was Satan. It's he came out of the pit, out of the abyss, and then we had the male child, which represented Yeshua, and had Michael the archangel. He was representing himself, and he is the protector of Israel. We had the beast from the sea last week, and that was what we would call today is the anti-Messiah, Antichrist. And then we had this week we're going to have the beast from the earth. Now, let's go ahead, and since some people are on phones and may not be able to see all of this, I'm going to go ahead and read it. And then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. This is Revelation 13, 11 and 12. Saw another beast rising out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. He exercises all the authority of the first beast before him, and he makes the earth and all those who dwell in it worship the first beast whose fatal wound was healed. All right. Some of the aspects that we see about this second beast here is that he's empowered by Satan. We know that because he says he's got all of the authority of the first beast, and of course the first beast then was directly involved with Satan. So we know that this second beast does also. Now the second beast here, he's described more in terms of religious aspects rather than political or power or something like that. And so that's he's kind of the counterpoint or the sidekick of the anti-Messiah. He's the bookend, as it were, of the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist. Now, if you remember to the ancient Israelites of the 2,000 years ago, they were not seafaring men, and so they figured that their worst nightmares would be something coming out of the ocean. They just thought that the ocean was a terrible place, and that's where demons and all the monsters lived, and so they viewed that first beast as being particularly horrible because he came out of the sea. Now, this second beast, they would not have appeared that he would not have appeared to be the big monster that perhaps the first beast was, because he did come out of the land. And we're talking about apocalyptic language and apocalyptic mindset, that literature that these guys were used to. The apocalyptic literature was very important, very popular, is well known 2,000 years ago in Israel. And so they would understand this beast from the earth as being maybe inferior to the first beast because he wasn't nearly as scary as the first beast. And so what do we have? It says that he came out like a lamb, and he had horns like a lamb. Well, if you've ever seen a little lamb, and their horns are not very substantial as a lamb. Now, as they grow older, yeah, they may have big horns, and like the bighorn sheep and so forth that have these huge racks. But this, when he says he's had the appearance of a lamb, and two little horns like a lamb, meaning that, okay, yeah, what do we think of when we see a lamb? And normally you just see the little sheep bouncing around, and they're cute as they can be. They're harmless, and their little horns just kind of protrude up. They can't hurt you, and so that's what he had the appearance. But it said that he spoke like a dragon. Now, what that means is that here's an example of the wolf in sheep's clothing. That underneath this appearance of a lamb was, it said, spoke like a dragon. Well, who was the dragon? The dragon was Satan. So there again, this is this tells you that he has a very close relationship with the dragon, meaning Satan, and as he has the same message. He's on board. They're all part of the same group. In fact, John calls him the false prophet, and it's you see it in Revelation 16:13. I can just read it. He refers to him as the false prophet. He says, "Then I saw coming from the dragon's mouth and from the beast's mouth and from the false prophet's mouth 3 unclean spirits like frogs." So those were the 3: the dragon, the first beast, the second beast, and that's what he's talking about there. Is calling this third beast the second beast, actually, the third critter in this vision. He calls him the false prophet. Now, again in Revelation 19:20, he says, "Then the beast was captured, and along with him the false prophet, who had performed the signs before him by which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast, as well as those who had worshipped his image. These 2 were thrown alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone." And Revelation 20:10, third one I'm going to pull up tonight on this, says, "The devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are too. They shall be tortured day and night forever and ever." Okay, so and Michael says we're halfway through Revelation. The chiasm for Revelation 12 and 13 presents the central issue of the book. Everything which led up to the chapters 12 and 13 and leads away from these 2 chapters present the supporting evidence. Okay. Well, what is the central issue in Revelation? Okay. Michael, the central issue of Revelation is, what is it? It's right there in the first verse of Revelation. It says it's a revelation of Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, and basically how that he is victorious in the end, and he defeats it defeats evil. So there's the theme. I don't think it was a spoiler alert because we already had that the first verse, but yeah, that's what all of this is. It's coming together to say, yeah, that Yeshua wins, and we know no matter what happens to us in this world and in the future, that we can look at the back of the book and we know who wins. So anyway, he's called the false prophet, and we saw in Revelation 16:13 where it talks about the dragon's mouth, the first beast's mouth, the second the false prophet's mouth. Okay, all of three these spirits, and what they do is they kind of form an unholy trinity, as it were, because the dragon, being Satan, is anti-father, anti-God, anti-creator. He's the one that's against, in opposition to God the Father. The beast from the sea, now that is, we talked about that as being both it is going to be a person, I believe, going to be an actual person, as well as he's going to be the head of like a one world government, so that the person and this one world government are actually, they're so closely aligned, they're one thing. It's like when it's popular to say that the president of the United States, you've heard it many times on TV and so forth, the president of the United States, the leader of the free world. Well, that's a little hyperbole, I believe, to say that, but this in this regard, you got the one world government, where there actually will be basically one world government ruling everything, and then this one guy that's going to be in charge. So yeah, he's going to be the man. And then you got the beast from the land, and that's going to be the false prophet, and that is going to be kind of against the Spirit of God, against the Holy Spirit, anti-Ruach HaKodesh. And so you've got Satan sets up something that is a counter to everything that is God, the God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So he's got things in place that are actually against that too. And we will find that many places where whatever there is that's good, whatever God has, then Satan comes up with some type of counterfeit for that. So I think we can now, one other thing that he says, I want to go back to the verses here. It says that he has all the authority of the first beast before him, and he makes the earth and all those who dwell in it worship the beast whose fatal wound was healed. So we remember from last week that this beast, the first beast, had some kind of a head wound, a sword or something, a wound that he recovered from. Now remember, even before that, we had the two witnesses that had been speaking for 3.5 years, and they had done all sorts of miracles and things that were they were designed to bring people back to or bring people to God, and for them to turn their lives around and make their confession and be a believer in Yeshua. And so it made a lot of people very, very uncomfortable with all of the things that they were doing. And you remember they had power to call down fire, and they could cause earthquakes and hail, and just they could wreak havoc if they needed to try to get people to repent. And so what happens? Satan then comes along, and he sets up a a scenario for, because when these two witnesses were killed, remember they laid in the street just out, nowhere in Jerusalem, and they were just laying out there. And after 3.5 days, then they were resurrected, and the people of the world are just absolutely horrified that these two witnesses have come back to life, because they know what they were like before, and now that they've been killed and then they come back to life again, like I think I've said it, when you're killed and come back to life again, it does not, it may not go well for the person that killed you. So, anyway, let's go ahead, and Satan sets up this counterfeit so that the beast is injured, looks like a fatal wound, and then he is resurrected from that. Now, there is also the picture here of who this beast is that I think we talked about before, this first beast, where he had received a head wound, and we talked about that could possibly be the Ottoman Empire that was defeated in World War I. The British took over for that, all of the Middle East, and then you look at it, and it looked as if Islam was, in decline. And then here, in, however many 100 years later, we see that Islam is definitely not in decline. It's on the rise, and so it appears that, okay, what was dead is now coming alive. But at the same time, I don't see the world going, ooh, wow, look at that. It's not as spectacular as to when you see an actual person get a fatal head wound and then they revive themselves. Okay. So I've put in here some of the activities of the false prophet, and where they're from in Revelation, and you'll see there that he presents himself as a religious figure in Revelation 12, because why? It says that he makes the earth and all those who dwell in it worship. He coerces, or he enforces worship. That is a religious figure that does that. He forces people to worship the beast, as it were. Okay, and then in verses 13, we'll look at it in a minute. He says he performs signs and wonders. And 14, he deceives the people. And now there is kind of a caveat with all of the things that this false prophet can do, and that is that he can only do what he is allowed to do by God. By this time, the people of the earth have hardened their hearts. They've turned away from God. They've rejected his call for repentance. So the Lord just allows them, allows the false prophet and the Antichrist to come in there and deceive people, and to just cause their own destruction because of the hardness of their heart. We see a similar thing to that back in Egypt. Now we see in verse 14 that he calls to make an image of the first beast, and then he seems to somehow make this image come alive. Now, who knows? I mean, back in the day when John is writing this, you had all sorts of priests and so-called prophets and magicians and seers and all those kinds of things, and they would do things like things to trick the populace, from anywhere from having fire come from an idol, or maybe something speaking from an idol, or something like that. They had all sorts of tricks that they would try to make this idol look like it was alive. And so who knows what will come about in the future, where we have images that even today we don't know what is true and what is false when it comes to some things that I've watched things on TV, on the movies and things like that you're looking at it and you say, wow, that is so realistic. You can almost you really can't tell whether that's real or not. And for me, I was wondering how in the world they ever went to this planet and took all of these movies of the avatars. Goodness sake! And then then they explained to me, Dad, that's only computer generated graphics. Okay. Yeah. Those are not real. My granddaughter told me, Grandpa, those are not real. They're only in the movies. Okay. But we're getting to a point in technology where things are really, you can't tell whether something is real or not. You can, with word, recognition software and so forth, they've got it to where you can make a politician say almost anything. And before this, in order to get a politician to say almost anything, you just had to pay him enough. But nowadays you can fake it, and you can get him to say just about anything. And it will appear. That's what we're going to be looking at in the future with this false prophet. He will seem to make this image of the beast come alive. And it will be either something that is supernatural, that is allowed by God, or it could be something that is technologically driven. Now, it says in the 15th verse, that he attempts to murder those who refuse to worship the beast, and then it forces people to take up the mark of the beast. So those are the activities that this false prophet is engaged in, and we'll see that now as we look at these other verses. Now, let me go ahead and stop right there. And does anyone have a comment or a question or anything like that? Okay, well, no questions or anything, but I did appreciate the opportunity to get a drink. All right, let's go ahead with Revelation and the 13 through 15. He performs great signs, talking about the false prophet, even making fire come down from heaven in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth through the signs he is permitted to perform, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image in honor of the beast who has the sword wound, and yet he lived. The second beast was permitted to give life to the image of the first beast, and so that the image of the beast could even speak and cause all who would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So we talk about this guy is performing great signs and wonders, and the concept of a false prophet or a prophet or any person that we would consider, they're not of God. They are they're a witch, they're a warlock, they're whatever you want to name. That these people are definitely not believers in Yeshua. So how can they do these great signs? Well, that is not a new concept. It's been around for many, many years. If you all you got to think back to is the guys in Egypt. Remember when Moses was called to go and speak to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go, when actually the Hebrew actually says send my people out. But that's another story for another day. But he goes to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, who are you? And what kind of a power do you have? Who's your God? And God had anticipated this, and he told or told Moses that, look, when Pharaoh asks you this question, you just take your staff, you and Aaron, and throw your staff on the ground. Let's see what it says here. We'll tune in to Exodus 7, 8 through 12. Adonai told Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh speaks to you saying, prove yourselves with a miracle, then you're to say to Aaron, take your staff and cast it down before Pharaoh so that it may become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went in to Pharaoh and did as Adonai had commanded. Aaron threw down his staff before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh called for the wise men and the sorcerers, and they too, the magicians of Egypt, did the same with their secret arts. Each man threw down his staff, and they became serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up all of their staffs. So there. The magicians in Pharaoh's court, they were able to duplicate what had happened with Aaron's staff. And, we see over and over again indications of where Satan has a counterfeit for all of the good things that God has. For every good thing that God has, you look enough and you'll see that Satan has a counterfeit for that. And oh my. Satan has a counterfeit for that. We just have to be aware of those counterfeits. And that's one reason why, as a believer, we should be very careful about following signs and wonders and getting too wound up in some of these things where and I don't want to call names or really get too much into it, but you'll see some of these televangelists and so forth that have these fantastic healing ministries, and I'm not denigrating healing, because I do believe in praying for the sick and for them to recover and so forth. But you see in today's religion a lot of smoke and mirrors, and a lot of these signs and wonders, and some of them I've actually I've been fairly skeptical of, and I don't know what maybe what they are, like the gold dust from heaven and so forth. I don't know what that is. So don't, like I said, don't build your theology over something like that. Stay in the Word. I go back to the what do you call it? The blood moons, and how that was supposed to portend something. So don't get too wound up in it. Here recently, the guy that Well, it was last weekend. Remember last weekend where the world was supposed to come to an end, and here we are. Or if it did come to an end, we missed it. So this idea of the sign in the stars and the moon and all that, it could have been a sign, but as far as being the end of the world, no, it hasn't been. So, anybody got a comment on that in terms of, I know somebody had cautioned me before, said, hey, now, don't put it down too much because it could actually mean something. And I said, well, it could very well be, but I just don't know what it is at this point. But I know the numerologist, that he said that the world would end next or last weekend. Said, oh well, he made a mathematical calculation error. That's just like the last half dozen of these guys that come in and says, well, the Lord is coming back, at such and such a date. So, so let me jump into some of these chats here just so I don't get too far behind. Michael McGuckin says, appreciate your interpretation of the Antichrist. He is relatively transparent as his magical tricks are easily fabricated by his magicians. Those who wish to see through the mirrors and fog, he is quickly exposed. I think that sin is the same. With the aid of the Holy Spirit, we will be able to see through the smoke and mirrors and not to be fooled. Most people do not wish to see through the magic. And sadly, that is true, Michael. A lot of people, and, the Bible talks about those that, those that have the itching ears, they are going to run to hear messages that they want to hear. Maybe not the ones that they need to hear, but the ones that they want to hear. So anyway, these, and I had one more in there. Said, Kathy says, can't we look at these things as signs instead of the actual time of Christ's return? Oh yeah, definitely. I think that, right now, I definitely believe that we're in the stage that, is described in the Bible as the birth pains. Just look at the earth, just the last couple of weeks, or last couple of months in case. Okay, the hurricanes. And then you've got, earthquake down in, Mexico City. And now I've seen in the last 2 or 3 days, volcanoes erupting. And so it's kind of like the earth is just groaning and just, in like a woman in her birth time of birth, and what do you call it, in travail, and that's kind of where we're at. These are signs, and while we may not know the actual day or the hour, because Yeshua says no one knows that except the Father, and he ain't telling, so that we can look at it. He says, but you can know the times and the seasons, when all this stuff is coming to pass. And I think we're getting close. Remember that I've taught that before a lot of this 7-year period of revelation can actually get started, we do have to have either a temple in place and operating or ready to be put into place very, very quickly. And we do know that the temple, what do we know? We know the temple furniture is all built. The priests have, the Levites have already started working on training the young men who would be the priests during any kind of a renewed or a rebuilt temple. So those things, those things would be, they're right there, almost ready. And Pete says that the Revelation starts with the Treaty of Many. Yeah, it was a 7-year treaty that then would be abrogated in the middle of it, the same time as the abomination of desolation, the middle of that 3.5-year period. But right now, I don't see any kind of a treaty on the horizon. It just seemed like it's almost everybody wants a treaty. Even let's see, I saw the president of Egypt, Al-Sisi, who was talking about he would like to get something going as a like to try to get something going between Israel and the rest of the world. Just, hey, can't we all just get along and have peace? So Michael says he finds it difficult interpreting earthquakes and volcanic eruptions as fulfillment of the Shofarim. Mexico sits on the Pacific Rim, and the earth shakes continuously along that rim. Actually, and Mexico City sits in the middle of a bowl of Jello, where they've actually built that city in the middle of a natural swamp. That was how the Aztecs had gone in there, and they would built their city by driving pilings in there and then carrying dirt in, sticking it in there, and it was, for many years, it was a floating city. Well, still, it's sitting over just a bowl of Jello. And you're right. There's a lot. There's a lot going on right now that can you look at it and say, yeah, well, this is definitely a sign from the Lord? Yes, maybe. No, maybe. We just know that things just seem in the last couple of 4 weeks, months maybe, that wow, it's just kind of accelerating a little bit. Just those are the signs that could be. All right, now we do know that this false prophet, again, he can call down fire, again, this is in response to the two witnesses, and who else called down fire? Elijah was up on Mount Carmel, and that was the famous confrontation with the 400 prophets of Baal, who he said, "Look, you guys over there," and he said, "Either we'll check it out, all the people of Israel. I'm going to go up there and we'll see whose God really is God." And so they said, "Sounds good to us." So they had Baal, all of you know the story, where they put up their sacrifice, and Elijah said, "Well, okay, call down the fire," and nothing happened. And so they started, praying to their false deity even louder. And Elijah gets up there and he says, "Hey guys, well, maybe if you got a little bit louder, maybe maybe your God can't hear you, or maybe he's asleep or something like that, or maybe he went to relieve himself." He's just really making a joke out of these guys, and nothing happened. So then Elijah came in and they poured water all over his sacrifice. If the animal wasn't dead already, it would certainly have drowned with all the water that they put on top of it. And then he stood back and they said, "Okay, here we go." And the fire came down and consumed the sacrifice, and it consumed a bunch of the prophets of Baal, and then they went down from there. Then they went down and rounded up all the rest of them and dispatched them with extreme prejudice down at the bottom of the mountain. But this calling down of fire was something that the two witnesses could do. Remember when Yeshua was on the earth, a couple of his disciples said, these guys are not listening to us. How about if we just call down fire from heaven? They're talking about Samaritans, so they didn't hold them in real high regard anyway. We'll just call down fire from heaven and zap those rascals. And Yeshua said, no, we don't want to do that. And so calling down fire, that's kind of a popular thing. We do it today. When somebody says something, we go, whoa, I'm going to back off. So when the lightning strikes, what's lightning? Fire from heaven. Boom. So, okay. And Michael says nuclear explosions. He said, I hesitate calling, as far as the fire coming down. I hesitate calling the weapons a fulfillment of this verse. I suggest that this is a supernatural event, possibly of the nature of Elijah's miracles of drought and rainfall. I definitely believe that what we're looking at here is supernatural stuff. I don't want to say, oh yeah, well, a lot of people have said, these various beasts and so forth, the scorpions that had the locust that had the scorpion tail, and said, well, that's maybe in his mind he saw that, but these were attack helicopters, Apaches and so forth. And nah, come on, get real. This is the end time. It could very well be something really, really horrific that God comes up with. And so, okay, this guy's only got the power that God gives him, similar to when Job was around and Satan came to him and said, now consider your servant Job over there. He's doing all this good stuff. Well, that's just because you take care of him. He's not really all that good. He's just, you take care of him. And so I said, just let me have him for a little while and you'll see he'll curse you. God said, no. He said, you go ahead, do what you will with him, but you cannot take his life. So, you know the story there. God had set a parameter there in which Satan had to operate, and he tried his best to get old Job to curse God and die, but Job was a man of character. All right, let's go ahead and read these last three verses here. Well, before I do that, anybody else got any comments up to this point? Okay. All right. The Revelation 13, 16 through 18. He also causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or upon their forehead. Now, and so no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here's wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is a number of a man. His number is 666. All right. So how many of us have never heard of the mark of the beast? Of course we have. I mean, there's if even a person that does not really read the Bible, or they're not any kind of, they may not even be a practicing believer of anything. When you talk about the mark of the beast, oh yeah, I've heard of that somewhere along the line. They don't know what it means, but everybody seems to have heard about the mark of the beast. So what do we have when at the end times here? We got three types of people I see on the earth. We see that there's going to be the ones that take the mark of the beast, and those that already have the mark of God, and so therefore they won't take they shouldn't be taking the mark of the beast. And then you've got the preppers and the planet, the preppers and the militia guys and all sorts of people that they'll refuse to take the mark, and so they can survive for a while as guerrillas, but that'll be a minority. 666 is the number. Name of Frederick was Kaiser Friedrich Wilhelm. Okay. I did not know that, Michael, because also 666, they tell me, was the number for Nero, and he died, I want to say, in 68 A.D. So, yes. He they used to talk about, well, maybe Nero could have been the 666, but he died in 68 and 68 A.D. And he'd never resurrected either, as far as we know. But that was a joke, as far as we know. So anyway, the believers in John's day probably knew who it was, and some would say, yeah, it was Nero, but Nero had been dead for 30 years by this time, 40 years by this time, 30 years by this time. And so, I don't think that, they would know, okay, it's been 30 years. He's not being resurrected at this point. No. So basically the meaning has been lost to us today. Now, if any of you have read much from Walid Shubat or Joel Richardson, you will know that they have an idea of what this 666 may actually mean. And there you go. Let's look at that. This is okay, folks. Now this is only what I've been told, because I don't read and write Greek, and I don't read and write Arabic. So I look at this, and there's let me find my little pointer here. Okay, this right here is just crossed swords. Okay, that's what that is. It's just crossed swords. But this here is these two letters here are meaning in the name of the deity of Islam. Okay, so down here in this bottom one is the Greek text, and it is the number 666, just based on their alphabet and the way that they did their numbering. So you can see that there's a big similarity. That could it have been that when John was looking at this stuff, he's looking at that and okay, the Greek number actually, I think one of the other was turned, that middle letter was kind of turned sideways. But could it possibly have been that John was looking at this and saying, aha, 666, and instead God was showing him a vision that this was a future Islamic battle? We don't know. I mean, that's something. It's a contention. It's an idea that Walid Shubat and Joel Richardson have, that it could possibly be. And there's a few other corroborations that would, they make this thing a little bit more believable. So, comments, questions, anything? I'm leaving the mic open. It's quiet tonight, so anybody can get on there and holler at me, and if you got something to say. So, and you're right. The most scholars they look at the 666 and they say, well, okay, we got to do some creative new math to make that 666 equal Nero, and possibly so. I don't know. That's just what like I said, smart people are telling me different things here. And this looks really good to me as far as this slide here, that in the name of the Islamic Islamic religion head deity, with the cross sword, meaning, if you don't do this, if you don't accept our religion, then I'm going to kill you. You didn't see my little dummy over here saying, I will kill you. So it just looks like that it's it could be that John was looking at a picture and he misinterpreted it as being the 666 of a Greek number. So could be. I don't know. Anybody got any? I mean, some people have heard that. I know. I've talked with some of you about that, and you've heard that also. If you read anything with Joel Richardson, that's one of the things that he really pushes in terms of what he thinks the end time enemy that will be defeated is that he believes that it's going to be Islam. So,
Steve.
Yes.
Michael here.
Yes.
I see Revelation written in several time frames. One circular and dealing with the present age in the Middle East, along about the first and second and third centuries, and the other time frame being lineal and running through a history. So all these things are happening twice.
I believe that a lot of these things could be happening more than twice. That these are forerunners for all throughout biblical history. We see things that happen, that are a type of something that's going to happen again. Because we've already seen some of the things that Antiochus Epiphanes was a type of the Antichrist. There are others who set themselves up to be rulers and so forth. You could look at the Roman governors as Roman emperors as being the kinds that have set themselves up, proclaiming that they are gods. I think you're right. It could be 2 or 3, 4 times. I mean, the idea that this is just a one-time thing, I think that's short-sighted. That this is something that John has written that is going to be for the ages, and then we're understanding. I think we're understanding Revelation better now than say perhaps people did 200 or 300 years ago. And so
John is creating models for us.
Exactly. And the Bible does the same thing, with God had his tabernacle in heaven someplace, or in somewhere that Moses was able to look at and then replicate. And certainly if he didn't have a model and God didn't tell him a whole bunch of stuff that was not written down in the Bible, I'm not sure he could have described and built the tabernacle just based on the instructions that are in the book, in the Torah. So, yeah, I think there is a good case for all these different things happening in rotation, just another 2 or 3 centuries or maybe a millennia apart.